Hello everyone, we're going to be continuing today on the previous model we started and going on learning about some additional modeling techniques, and I'll show you how to start texturing your made object as well. So let's go ahead and just reopen this scene if it was modeling, and what we'll do is start creating. What I want to create is a set of stairs. These stairs they look like well, never mind what they look like. I'm just going to create them and you'll kind of see what they'll become. So let's go ahead and just do the create cube button and change these polycube settings over here. Let's go ahead and change the width to 11 and let's just do the depth as 36 inches and the height as 1.5. Let's go ahead and add some subdivisions in the depth and the width as well. Let's go ahead and do 3 for both. Okay, so let's go ahead and move this object up a little bit. Switch to a 2-dimensional view, and I think we'll want the front view in this one. I hit F to zoom in into the object again. I'm just going to close the tool settings over here. That'll free up some space in the panel here. And what I'll do is move this straight down. Actually, I'll leave it right there. And usually when you have stairs, they're about 7 inches apart from each other in terms of height. So what I'll do is basically count the height and make it a more realistic height. So right here, this is about 7, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Let's go down one. Okay, and let's go ahead and take a look at that. And the look I'm going for, I want it to look as if it's a wood panel laid into like a manufactured steel frame of some sort. So what I'll actually do is select this one face by going to face selection mode, clicking it, and expanding it out. Let's go to top view. And so this starts, actually let's do it this way. I'm going to go to vertex selection instead, and I'll just select all of the ones in the middle and just expand them straight out. Zoom in pretty far. Clear mode. And thinking a depth of about 1/4 inch might be adequate. So let's go ahead and adjust it. Something about there. Okay. And now what we'll do is select these vertices and expand them out so that they're about 1/4 inch away. And since I scaled it last time along this axis, all I have to do is click and hold the middle mouse button and just drag it straight down. That way, if you don't see the handle that lets you scale it, it makes it a little easier to do it this way sometimes. It's being a little sensitive. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Okay. That's about right. Okay, let's go ahead and leave that. I'm going to hit Q to get out of that. And then let's go to object mode. Actually, let's go ahead and select the face. Let's go ahead and get out of that view, go to perspective. So now what I want to do is, I'm just going to offset this face a little bit. By selecting it, I'm going to go to, well, first let's switch to the polygons menu. I'm going to go to the Edit Mesh and then Extrude tool, and let's go ahead and click this poly tool. Which one is it? I think it's, yeah, it's this one. Trying to see on the right hand side where I can tweak it more specifically. Local direction. There we go. Local translate. Let's just let's go ahead and do, let's do an eighth of a, let's do a 16th of an inch. Oh, it's not too much. So that would be 0.0625. Go ahead and type that in. 0.0625. Hit enter. So now, if you look really closely, it'll have a slight difference in the edge. Okay. I've gone ahead and added a couple other details to this stair. As you can see now, it has a bracket down below it and some kind of attachment that'll go right against the wall. This will just help make it look a little bit more believable. And so what we'll do now is position it, and I'll show you how to duplicate it so that in such a way that it actually automatically rises and goes along the span of the stairs automatically. So let's just go to a 2D view and let's move it down here. You'll see that if the top of the stair is at the same plane as the ground, it's at about negative 0.75. Let's just type that in. Hit enter. And let's go ahead and move it up 7 inches from there. So let's just go ahead and do, I guess that would be 6.25. And let's go to our top view. And I can just hit F and it'll automatically focus in on the stair. And let's just place it somewhere on the wall, maybe a little bit closer, since that's where the bolt is connecting. And let's just move it away from the door a little bit. That's, yeah. Right here's the door, but let's go ahead and move it a bit away from it. Okay. So now what we'll do is duplicate it. And what you want to do is click on Edit and then Duplicate Special option box. And I've already set the settings, but when stairs, well, the tread of stairs are usually about 11 inches and they usually rise about 7 inches. So in this case we're going to be moving it on the x-axis, negative 11 inches, because that's from left to right, and then we'll have it rise up 7 inches along the y-axis. And we'll set the number of copies to 8, and then up here at the top make sure it's set to instance. When you set it to an instance, anything you do to the original stair will actually affect the rest of the duplicates. So if you ever want to texture it or make some modifications to it, this will make it easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit Duplicate Special. Now you can see you have a flight of stairs complete. Now that we've created the stairs, let's go ahead and add some realism to it and start adding textures. So what you'll want to do is make sure your project is set and then go to the internet I've gone to this website called cgtextures.com. It's a great resource if you're looking for any kind of building material. You don't want to go to Google simply because a lot of times materials you'll find are just snapshots someone took with their digital camera, and they're not very usable in 3D modeling because oftentimes the images will be skewed in perspective, and when you're modeling an object and texturing it, you want to have a straight-on image of whatever the texture is, and it'll allow you to tile that texture and basically repeat it over a large surface. So let's go ahead and pick this one, and on this website, if you create a profile, it'll give you a quota of 15 megabytes per month. So just be careful. You'll see that there are different file sizes. Stick to, usually the medium ones are detailed enough, and the files are a lot smaller than the larger ones. As you can see, if you download a dozen of these, you'll probably go over the 15 megabyte quota if it's 1.4 megs. So let's go ahead and save this, and we will save it to our project directory. We'll have to locate that folder. And when you find your directory, save any textures that you find into your source images folder. And let's go ahead and save it. Okay, and let's just go into Photoshop, and I'll show you another step you can take with that texture. If you open it, let's go ahead and open the location. Let's go ahead and open it in Photoshop, and we'll create a black and white version of it with some adjusted levels that you can then use to add a bump map to the wood surface. And this adds another another level of realism to it. So let's go ahead and go to, let's save it as a different file first. You don't want to save it as the same file name, otherwise you'll erase it. So let's just call this one wood fine 3 bump. And maximum file settings. And let's go ahead and go to black and white. Go with the settings. Since this is a reddish kind of wood, exaggerate that a little bit. Hit OK, and then go to Image, Adjustments, and Levels. And let's exaggerate the whites and the highlights and the dark points. Like this, and save it again. And we can close Photoshop now. So to get to where all your materials are located, you have to open up what's called the Hypershade. You can do that by holding the spacebar and then left clicking above. And these are all sorts of options as to what you can see. And so go ahead and select Hypershade Render Perspective. And this right here is your Hypershade. It shows all the materials. We've already created the glass surface. So let's go ahead and create a new one. In this case, we want the wood to be somewhat reflective, so let's create a blend. And let's rename this. Let's call this wood material. And over here, in the material attributes, go ahead and click this checker box next to the color attribute. And there are all sorts of options you can pick, but in this case, since we've downloaded an image, let's associate a file with a color. And as you can see down here, there's a new node. There are actually two new nodes associated. One is the placement node, which controls how this texture interacts with the geometry, and the second node is the actual file. So click on the file, and then over here on the right side, you might have to scroll down a little bit. Go ahead and click on this folder icon next to the image name, and if your project is set, you should automatically see all the textures you've downloaded. So I'll just go ahead and choose this one, open, and let's go go ahead and expand this view again. What I'll do now is just select faces. Let's go ahead and right hold click and go to face selection mode. And click that tiny face there and hold shift and double click this one. It should select all the faces along the perimeter there. And then go ahead and hold shift again and select these two faces at the top. Hit the spacebar and go over your material and right hold click on top of it. This will bring up a couple options for you. Go ahead and assign the material to the selection. This will assign it to just those spaces that we selected. It won't apply it to these others. And if you select something else, you'll notice that the texture hasn't shown up. So what you have to do is click this sphere with the checker pattern on it, and that'll reveal all the textures that you've created. Oh, and let's see here. Doesn't appear to have applied to these other stairs, so let's go ahead and just delete them real quick. Go to object mode, and just drag select the rest, delete, select this one, go to modify, or edit rather, duplicate special, and since we already have all the previous settings entered, we'll just leave them as they were the last time, so I'll just hit that, and now all the stairs have the texture. To see what it looks like rendered, go ahead and click this clapperboard, and it looks nice. The wood looks a little bit flat right now, so let's go ahead and add the bump map to it right now. Go ahead and get back to the Hypershade and scroll down over here until you see bump mapping, and just like the picture that we applied as a texture, we're going to apply the black and white image as the bump map. So we'll associate a file with it again, and you'll notice that the Hypershade work area has become kind of messy. You can fix that by right hold clicking on the material and selecting Graph Network. That cleans it up. Go ahead and click File 2 and then the folder here and choose Wood Fine Bump and hit open. And let's go ahead and render it now and see what it looks like. Okay, so it looks a little bit too bumpy. Unless you're going for the rustic look, this might be a little bit too much. So let's go ahead and go back to the Hypershade. Go ahead and click on this node, which is the bump 2D node, and change the bump depth. Change it from 1 to maybe 0.1. And middle mouse click here on this panel. That selects that view for the rendering, and click the clapperboard again. And yeah, that's a lot better now. And you can actually save these renders temporarily if you want to compare and tweak some settings. You can do that by clicking this icon and then modifying the setting. Let's change this to 0.3 instead. And open up the render view and re-render. So it looks a lot bumpier now, so let's go ahead and compare by sliding this over. This was a previous one, and this is what we have now. And I think 0.2 might be ideal. Let's go ahead and do that. Save this one as well, and re-render. Okay, looks good. Next, let's create some railings for the stairs. Let's start by creating the pole for the railing. So we'll go over here and just create a basic cylinder. And over here, we'll go ahead and change some of its attributes. Let's do a radius of 0.75 inches. And let's do a height of 36 inches. And just for the sake of preserving resources on your computer, let's go ahead and reduce the number of subdivisions in the axis. Let's just do 15. It's always a good idea to keep in mind how many polygons that you're using. If you have too many, it'll start taking a lot longer to render. So let's go ahead and go back to our two-dimensional view. And you can actually access that view by holding the spacebar and going to Panels, and then Saved Layouts, and go to 4-View. Now let's go ahead and go to our front view. Let's just position this right above the first stair. And then from the top, let's go ahead and position it over the stair as well. Right at the edge. Something like that looks good. Okay. Now what we'll do is create a path for a profile to go along, and this will create the railing for the top. Actually, first let's go ahead and duplicate this. I'm going to keep that pole selected and hit Control D, and I'll just place this above the last stair. Make sure it's centered first, and put it up. Okay, let's start creating our path for the profile now. Go to Create, and then EP Curve Tool, Option Box. Let's just do a linear one. That'll create no curves. Those start to complicate the overall shape, and sometimes they don't do exactly what you want. Okay, so I'm just going to hold X. That'll snap it to the grid. And we'll do something like this. Give it a bend, slight bend. Okay. I'm going to hit Enter to complete that curve. And I'm going to switch views now to the side view. And this time I'll create a circle that'll go along that path that we just created. So go to Create, and then NURBS Primitives, and Circle. I'll just do something small like this. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to our top view. I think it might be easier to position this. Okay. We have to reposition this curve as well, actually. Let's go ahead and move it. Top view. Sorry if that's disoriented. So I'll just center this curve right above this pole. And you'll notice that part of it disappears. That has to do with how the top view camera is set up. It has a cutoff point that doesn't let us see the rest of it. But it shows up in perspective fine. Alright, so let's position this circle so that it's right in front of the guide. We went pretty close. Something like that. Okay. So I'm keeping the circle selected, and then I'm going to shift select this curve. And make sure you're in the Surfaces toolbar, and then go to Surfaces, Extrude Option Box. And just make sure it's set to at path here on the result position. And hit Extrude. That creates a nice railing for you. And let's go ahead and reposition it so that it's a little bit lower. A little bit lower. So it looks like it's joined to this pole here. Okay. Let's go ahead and create a texture for the walls now. Let's go ahead and work from the exterior. I think we'll look for maybe a brick material. Let's go back to cgtextures.com and let's just type in brick here. Now let's actually go with something with the CMUs. Let's go ahead and do the small one. Again, I'll save it to the directory. And back in Maya, I'll go ahead and create a new material for it. This time we don't want it to be shiny, so I'll just create another Lambert. And I'll call this one brick, or just call it facade for now. And down here, click the color attribute, attach a file, select the file, and then find the image. Hit OK. And what we'll do here is go ahead and select this wall here, and we'll assign a texture to it by right-hold clicking on it and going down to where it says assign existing material, and go ahead and select facade. And as you can see, the projection isn't quite right. This middle row shows bricks that are fairly skinny, and then up here they're stretched out and rather high, and then here in the middle they're more scrunched together. So what we'll do is select these faces, and then make sure you're in the polygons menu set. Go to create UVs, planar wrapping, and then option box. And this wall is facing the Z direction, which is indicated here. So go ahead and make sure that's set. And bounding box is fine. Go ahead and hit project. Now you can see it has a more uniform pattern. Let's select this wall here and assign the brick texture to it as well. We'll go ahead and select these faces. Right hold click on them and assign existing material, facade. And this one, because of how it was extruded, is completely incorrect, so let's go ahead and change it. And while we're at it, let's actually take these two elements, go back to object mode, select this one and then that one. And what we'll do is combine them. So by going to mesh and then combine, it turns this wall into one element. Let's go ahead and rename this too. Okay. So now what we'll do is select all these faces along this side. And again, we'll do create UVs, planar mapping option box. And actually, I should have done something over here to the other side as well. Let's go ahead and keep the image height width ratio, and hit project. Oh, and we also have to change the axis. So this time it's coming from the x-axis. So go ahead and select that and hit project. There you have it. Let's redo this one too while we're at it, just so we have the same proportion as this side. Otherwise, the bricks here on this side look rather long, and over here they're correct proportion. So over here, go to create UVs, planar mapping, and project from the z-axis, and hit project. And now you'll notice that the scale isn't quite right. So go ahead and select one of these cubes and just drag it down. And you want these to line up perfectly. Looks about right. Okay, go ahead and get back to object mode. And let's see if we can fix this inside. Let's go ahead and select these faces. And let's go ahead and assign Lambert 1. And remember, Lambert 1 is the default material. You generally don't want to modify that at all. Otherwise, whenever you create a new object, it'll by default have Lambert 1, and if it has texture, that new object will also have that texture. Great. So now the inside has a uniform texture, and so does the outside. And those are the basics of texturing.